Hello, everyone. My name is Jaquise Moore. I am the host of this lovely page called Learning with Jasmine. I am just a mom who has a child who has autism. This is a safe place, you guys, for those who do not know. We come together, we collaborate, we talk about some issues, not just autism, but just some topics that other children may be going through. This pandemic has affected everyone, no matter what race, no matter what class, whatever, no matter what age. And so parents are here at home and, there are some things that diagnosis or not. And so we're going to be talking to a good friend of mine, and she's going to introduce herself and her profession.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Maynard, but I'm more affectionately known as China. Thank you so much, Jaquise, for inviting me tonight. I'm really excited to join forces with you as from mom to mom, as educator to educator, just trying to get through this, pandemic and everything. I'm really excited to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Really, really excited, and hope that some of my experience can, lend a helping hand to someone out there.
Hmm.
So, just really briefly, I'm a special educator by profession. I have been a special educator going on 15 years now. And I have worked within 15 years, it has covered different environments. So I've worked in a lock facility with students with severe disabilities. So it was pretty much like a psychiatric hospital, and there was a school there. And so I taught there for about 6 years, and then eventually went into teaching within the public school system. And in that time, I just learned a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And then on top of that, just being a mother, and also dealing myself with, some of the difficulties that I will be sharing a little bit more later.
Hmm.
And so hopefully I'll be able to share, something that can be beneficial or spark, interest or something for somebody out there. So thank you all for joining.
Yes, exactly. Thank you all for joining. And again, this is an opportunity. It's a live, but I noticed that after live chats, it could be thousands, no pressure, no thousands, no pressure, but thousands of people watching. And please, obviously, I think that's the thing. It's about people sharing also the information. And so it's also a great resource page. Okay, so we're going to get started. What does severe emotional disturbance mean?
So, I first want to start by saying that I am not a licensed clinician or a psychiatrist by any means. I am not at all. And so I just want to put that out there.
Yes.
I am only speaking from a special educator's perspective. And so there's certain things that, I might not know, and that's okay because that's not a part of my profession directly. And
Hmm.
so I just want to put that out there for everybody. But when you look at the definitions of a severe emotional disturbance, you've also heard about emotional and behavioral disabilities.
Hmm.
So if you're speaking specifically about children, it's essentially going to be a diagnosable mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder that is of a sufficient duration to meet a diagnostic criteria specific within the DSM-5. Okay, so it is very specific. It's not just I think that my child has a disability. It is not just, my child don't act right, quote unquote. And so I know that they have, a SED. That is not the case. This is something that has to be diagnosed. And when they talk about sufficient, that it is over a sufficient duration of time, it's not just something that only behavior that will manifest itself only in one location. Like, so for example, certain behaviors that might only exhibit itself in one situation by the time somebody is diagnosed with a severe emotional disturbance, this has manifested itself in different environments, different times over a time period, and not just under one criteria. So there's different things that based on whatever specific disability, because SED or EBD is kind of like an umbrella, and then there's a variety of disabilities and disturbances, diagnoses and so
Right.
forth that fall underneath that umbrella.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And just for clarification, because those who may be listening and don't know the terminology, can you break down the terminology of what you just mentioned?
Yes. So SED is severe emotional disturbance. EBD, and sorry, I know that special ed, for example, is like the world of acronyms, especially
Right.
MCPS. But EBD is emotional and behavioral disability,
Okay.
or disturbance. We've uh, have used that interchangeably.
Okay. I think your volume went down. Can you?
Oh, it's it.
Okay. Okay. I can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, okay, here we go. What does it look like in an individual, child, and adult?
Okay. So, let's see. So I'll talk about children first. So it really just depends. There's some times where there will be an early onset of certain behaviors. Um, I have had parents that have talked to me about students that I have taught, and they will share that their son or daughter had really displayed certain behaviors early on, like even in preschool, kindergarten, for example. Some of them have been had to get kicked out of preschool and out of daycare, for example. And a lot of times is because of being really oppositional, um, being very aggressive, not just the inability to express themselves, but it can become very volatile in
Hmm.
certain situations. So there's like that kind of more outward behavior of the acting out, cursing really early, and attacking their parents or attacking other students and so
Hmm.
forth. That's one kind of way that you've seen things. And then there's some of the internalizing behaviors, so like suicidal thoughts, self-harm. We all have like our ups and downs where we're kind of sad sometimes, but if it's like very sad for a long amount of time, a lot like severe shutting down behavior where your child is not wanting to talk at all, very fearful or anxious in situations that maybe even start to affect, especially when you see the younger ones, um, it'll hurt their bellies, like they'll have belly aches all the time. It can affect their bowel movements. They can even be regression in their like potty training or their sleeping, but it will happen over a certain amount of time. So that's like when they're a little bit younger. As they get older, obviously some red flags are hyperactivity. And we know that all children, get hyper, and all children are going to display, those sugar rushes or those, times of the day where they're like super hyper. That's just children.
Right.
We're talking about like severe impulsivity, like super short attention span, where you can literally be eye to eye with the kid and they're like cannot focus at all. And not just at one time, like that's a continuous like pattern. I
Hmm.
think that's the key.
Yeah, that's the key.
So, yeah, that's the key. It's not just a couple times here or there, it's a pattern and it's in different environments. Impulsivity is a big thing. Obviously acting out, fighting, but just any like excessive anything, excessive fear, excessive anxiety, excessive aggression,
Hmm.
things like that will always be like the red flags.
Hmm.
I would definitely say from my experience. Something to keep in mind too is if you see like a drop in academic achievement, where, let's say, there was, academic progress that was occurring, and then it starts to kind of taper off, and grades start to drop, and friendships are cut off and things like that, or students that normally liked certain activities and then they stop liking those activities. Those are kind of like little red flags that
Mm,
something might, be going on. It doesn't necessarily mean, and I want to say this again and again and again, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you see these behaviors, that it necessarily means that a student might have an SED, or your child might have, an SED. But
mhm.
it might just be like a red flag that you might need to look into with a professional.
Right. And also, here's a commercial break. Definitely, parents, take notes of when those things have occurred. If it's, you know, um, right before dinner time,
Mm-hmm.
versus, when they're trying to get ready for school or whatever the case may be. Definitely take notes of when the behaviors occur. And then you can talk to your professional, so you can talk to their pediatrician and kind of give more information. Okay, definitely.
Now, one
Okay, and what about for if you go ahead?
Well, one thing I wanted to say real quick
Mhm,
about the children is that you want to, like, really just pay attention. Sometimes, and as adults, sometimes we can try to project some of our things onto them. And that can happen in so many different ways. But, like, for example, let's say, a fish dies, for example, and the child just starts to seem really, really sad. You never want to minimize these things, um, because you can learn a lot from that. Again, that's not saying that, if this child falls into a depression or gets really, really sad, doesn't mean that they necessarily have a diagnosis. But, just in general, you want to be able to pay attention. Please do not minimize the things that your child is going through, and always consult, a professional.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, in terms of adults,
Hmm.
right? Okay. So, in terms of adults, this can manifest itself in many, many ways. Obviously, for those that may have had a pattern from when they were a child, getting into an adult. Because I will also say that sometimes if you have a brain injury, for example, um, that can, make some alterations, and people can literally shift their entire personality. We have definitely seen, there was one student that had a brain injury, and they just had like an onset of behavior that they never saw before. Some people will have a traumatic experience that occurs, for example, some type of sexual abuse or physical abuse. And sometimes that can cause for the onset of something that may have been there, but unfortunately, let's say the trauma kind of, triggered that, so
Right.
that's something to keep in mind too. So, adults, any inability to hold and maintain a job, engaging in risky behavior like sexual behavior, having several partners, not using protection, but, just not thinking through. That's that kind of like that impulsive behavior, wanting something and just kind of going without thinking about all of the consequences and the implications that that the decision might make, on their lives and the lives of other people. It can also impact your finances. So people that are having a really hard time saving, budgeting, um, being able to make the right decisions, you know, um, prioritizing, what is best for them and their
Hmm.
future. Obviously, those that might have addictions have usually have some underlying mental health issues as well. Inability to meet standard in the workplace. And that can be different things, from because they can't get there on time, they're
Hmm.
taking off a lot, or just not having the skills to be able to, function properly,
Hmm.
in the workplace, or even at school, at church, and so forth. But I do want to add one thing,
Okay.
that medicated and treated versus unmedicated.
Hmm.
So, there might be an adult or a child that may be diagnosed, with, one of the disabilities. However, they may not display some of the behavior that I am talking about.
Hmm.
And it could be because that's just not how their disability manifests itself. But also because they have, they're in therapy, are medicated and so forth and so on. So, I can share a personal story in regards to that.
Hmm.
I, as an adult, was diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety disorder. And for myself, I did not, know about my diagnosis and know about, treatments and so forth until I was an adult. My behavior at work and my ability to perform, to my best, it looked different,
Hmm.
unmedicated and medicated, and I'll just be very transparent, just to kind of put it out there,
Right.
so it can look very different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And like I said, this is a platform of autism awareness, but it could be for all walks of life.
Yeah.
There is some things that you pointed out, like when it comes down to severe emotions, um, I wouldn't say it's like just extremely severe because, like I said, you guys, if you guys have followed me, it's been decreasing. That her behavior has been decreasing, but there is some impulsive moments
Mhm.
when there is like you know, on the highness, on her peak moment, and then she just drops, and then she's perfectly fine. So not saying that she has severe emotional disturbance,
Mhm.
uh, but there is when it comes down to disability, it can be thin ice, you guys. It could be autism, ADHD, thin ice. It could be some other things that are thin ice that are like there's one side and versus other, and we can see on both sides. And so, um, there's no diagnosis yet. I believe that she may have ADHD. Another specialist said that she thinks she has ADHD.
Mhm.
Um, but, we don't know. We don't know at this time. But what I'm saying to you is even though you have heard it, again, write down the behaviors, write down the times, then write down all the information. So when you go to your your pediatrician, your child's pediatrician, you will have that information available. Because if not, they're going to ask you for videos. If you have videos, definitely get videos
Mhm.
of when the outburst um, arises and
Right.
then falls. So, just letting you guys know. All right. So the next question is describe some stressors that may cause anxiety. Now we kind of talked about a little bit about that, but
Mhm.
kind of go in more depth.
Sure. So, let's say, okay, so let's start with home.
Mhm.
Obviously, especially nowadays with, virtual learning, a lot of parents, may be working from home or may have lost their job. There may be, like financial impact. Things that happen at home will, affect the child. It depends on how, you know, the level of how it will manifest itself, depending on, the student's, the child's, emotional state and their coping skills and so forth. But home obviously is a major factor,
Mhm.
and stressor. In regards to like school, for example, if the student has the ability to access the curriculum, are they reading on grade level? Do they understand the work that is being given to them? Is it being given to them at their level? Are they able to access the same resources as their peers? Do they feel like they fit in? A lot of times, not just for children, but for adults as well.
Mhm.
Just not knowing if you will be accepted, not knowing if you are seen in the same light as your peers. Those are some stressors that can affect you as well. I know earlier, I think I mentioned the finances,
Mhm.
but even like for adults, just finances overall, can be a major stressor, especially nowadays. Um, in terms of children, sometimes knowing too much information. And so I think nowadays, with parents being home a lot longer and more towards the day, more longer in the day, listening to the news, watching the news,
Mm,
talking about the news in your home, if you don't think that that will affect your child, like it
it
absolutely
will.
will,
It will.
whether they have a diagnosis or not.
Right.
Um, but it can definitely be a major, major stressor. So, we want our children to be informed. I'm a big, believer in having my children to be, as we say, woke. I want them to be aware and educated. However, I have to be mindful that there is but so much that my child may be able to understand, and be able to, cope with. So
Right.
let's just, try to keep that in mind. Lack of coping skills, just not knowing. Sometimes where we are confronted with a situation, and sometimes we just don't know how to navigate that problem. That can cause anxiety as well. Um, and just not knowing how to express that, not
Hmm.
knowing how to, not having that wherewithal to look for support, or knowing where the resources are. A lot of times that can just internalize, how can I get through this? This is not going to work, assuming the worst. Those kind of things are definitely, some stresses that can cause anxiety. But there's so many
Hmm.
different things. So I mean, we're talking like civil sibling rivalry, blended families. Like there's so many different
Just the
things.
COVID. Just,
Yeah, just COVID
just
alone.
COVID. I notice I do a program every week, every weekend, and I hear the kids say, you know, just the COVID itself is stressing them, not to be even be around, and not saying that they have it, but that's just normal. That's just us human beings, that we are designed, you guys, to be around other people. Now, even I know there's people that may like being home by themselves, but we are still in that moment. We still have, those type of, those particular friends or family members that, we can invite over. We can't do that. And so, just hearing about COVID-19 and, all the stuff that's going on, like you were saying about the news, it stresses, you know, everyone, even the elderly, and so, it's something that we have to keep in mind when, especially when you have a child has a diagnosis, or you yourself have a diagnosis, what
Absolutely.
things stresses you off, stresses you out, is something that we have to, some things, just, oh my goodness, this is me, you guys.
Mhm.
If someone is parked in our if someone is parked in our special spot, I'd be like, "Who is that?" Something like that. It
That
just
has triggers.
right, exactly. So I
Mhm.
mean, just something like, whatever your stresses are, just be mindful of how much engagement, how much things that you like, if you're really thinking about it and going from there. Yes.
Absolutely. And I think, as adults, it's very important for us to be aware, take, inventory of the things that stress you out. What are some patterns, things like that for just, us as adults. But, if you are a caretaker of a child, be it your own child or, grandchild, God, whatever it is, you
Mhm.
know, paying attention to the things that trigger them as well.
Mhm.
I'm a mother, and all of my children respond to things differently. There's, certain things that I can say to Gabriella that I cannot say to Kyla. The old school way of parenting by fear, like, uh, for example, use the bathroom now, because if you don't use it now, you might pee on yourself outside. Just another kid be like, oh, let me go hurry up. And, another kid might be like, whatever. But
I'll just do it. Don't matter.
right, they're like, whatever, we'll see if that happens.
Right.
But to a kid with anxiety, that could cause them to second guess, do I need to go again? Do I need to go again? Do I need to go in, and have some compulsive behavior, about having to go to the bathroom several times now, And so you got to be mindful of the way that your child interprets and encodes messages. Just
Hmm.
because your mom or dad might have said certain things to you that worked, that might not be appropriate for your child.
And that's with any walks of life. You don't have
Any.
to have a diagnosis or anything, but especially for those who might have an emotional, they internalizing everything that's they're feeding into what they hear and what they basically what the sensory are.
Yep.
And so that's something that's that's good information.
Hmm.
Okay, so last but not least, what can parents do to support their child with SED?
Yes. So one of the first things that I will definitely say, and I think Jaquise, you and I have kind of like, thrown it in there,
Hmm.
here and there throughout so far in this program, is definitely speak to the pediatrician, speak to the professional, and be educated, and not just educated in terms of like Googling your questions, but be educated and informed of your child's behavior. So once you start noticing certain things, take note. And I think Jaquise had mentioned this earlier. Take
Hmm.
note, when is this happening, for how long, what do they respond to, what works, what doesn't work, is it certain times of the day, is it certain times of the year,
Hmm.
so certain things that you want to be able to, when you do go to the professional, that you have some data of your own to share. Because a lot of times, if you just show up to a doctor, for example, and you're just like, I think that my child might have, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, well, what do you see? And then you're unsure of what you see, or you can't really pinpoint patterns, that not saying that it's gonna like derail the whole thing, but you want to come to the table, being educated and informed of what is happening right in front of you.
Okay, commercial break. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, this is a personal conversation, you guys. So when I saw some behaviors of Jasmine, Christina was one of the two people that I contacted.
Mhm.
And I was like, Christina, and you said the same thing. Wait, get some information and go with, and I literally have said that before on here on this platform. And this is so important. And I didn't know when and what time, so it was prolonged. It was like 6 months. But when I went there, I had videos. I had and actually by then I didn't have to even show the lady. Jasmine showed the lady herself of
Oh,
how
yeah,
she was
yeah,
behaving. But
right,
by then it was it was really strong in herself that the lady was like, oh yeah, she has autism.
right.
And so that was a great advice, and I'm glad that you said that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. And I say, even for myself, I have a child that has, issues with anxiety. And, luckily I have a background in studying behavior, but for a parent that might not have that, you will feel more confident in yourself. And better, you will position yourself in a better place to advocate for your child when you are more informed and educated about what your child is going through, because no one can advocate for your child better than you can.
Yes.
But especially if you are educated and informed, you have to have that.
Yes, and I think it's so important to add on, like, this is why I do this, advocate,
Mhm.
but to and not saying that professionals will not listen to you, but they will be more sure. They will be
Yeah.
more open to understand and to accept. Okay, let me go now. Professionally and legally, it doesn't even matter if you say to your teacher, "I think my child has this." Legal, if you write a documentation, can you check on IEP or whatever?
Mhm.
Legally, they have, I think, 2 or 3 months to verify everything, to make a meeting, to have a team of meetings. And for the side note, if you guys will check out one of our videos called special education videos, a special educate another special educator breaks down the IEP and all that other stuff, the
Well, that's
team.
great.
But that is so important to be mindful. And like Christina's saying, that there's so many meanings that if you're not educated, they're just throwing it out, and you don't know. So it's so important to have that homework task first and then present everything. So yes, add it on. Yes.
They have they have advocates that are available for parents.
Ah.
There's a lot of things that are out there, support groups, and I think where I'm kind of shifting a little bit, you know, to best support your child, obviously to love and support them, to, talk to the professionals. But it is so important for you to educate yourself as the parent, and for yourself to be as healthy as possible, and so that might mean, seeing a professional yourself, seeing going joining a support group, so that you are not only being more educated and more informed, but you're also able to kind of unload a little bit, so that you're not carrying so much and then maybe taking it out on your child, because if we're okay, our child is okay, or we are at least in a better position to care for our child. But the times where I was not okay, it was hard for me to be there for my children, and those that have these special needs need us, in our best shape as possible. So for us to be healthy, us to have self-care, for us to have our own support group, and for us to even know when to tap out, and that is huge. um,
Yesterday, I decided to take a walk by myself for
Mhm.
30 minutes. I wasn't going really anywhere. I was going around the neighborhood, but I
Right.
was like, I'm free. It's just like I needed that self care so I can continue on doing what I had to do as a
Yeah,
parent. And so it is so
absolutely.
important to have that moment that you just like, okay, um, be like, honey, can you watch the kids? Or,
Mhm,
whatever the case may be, or you guys do this while I go upstairs and just, you know, take a bath
mhm.
by myself, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
Right. Whatever it is, just have that moment every single day. Definitely to add on to definitely uh go in depth and about supporting group. I think is so important. I have maybe two or three different type of autism groups on Facebook right now.
Mhm,
But definitely have that moment also when you have pulled the people that can relate to, but you also have somebody that is, that hand group, that little small hand group that you can say, okay, I'm having a bad day today.
mhm,
You know, uh, to be more transparent, Jasmine had an okay day.
mhm,
Jasmine had, was on the step, and then all of a sudden she just went upstream, and then she went downstream, and then she has had the best rest of the evening. But when she was upstream, I messaged a group of sisters that I be getting to know, and I say, we have a like messaging log of just people encouraging scripture reading and whatever the case may be. And like, I need for y'all to pray on Jasmine right now.
mhm.
And then within like 5 or 10 minutes, she came back down, and it's and something that is so important to kind of tap into, and that's probably a different uh platform to really talk into. But maybe if children with autism, have that emotions, have that that impulsive moments. Is there a internal trigger that, maybe in the brain, I don't know, that makes it like burst, I should say, if you understand what I'm saying. And then all of a sudden it's calm. I'm not sure. Like, I've always wanted to know. And so when I was talking to her therapist today, she said she heard that sometimes, um, she said she heard that, um, some kids, it actually hurts them. You were talking about the belly, they talk about a lot of times in autism, the gut
Yeah,
affects the behavior. So, like, I have researched,
yeah.
and let's try it out. Let's see how this goes, So can you kind of add on to?
Well, I can definitely say so. This I don't know if but the first thing that kind of comes that came to my mind just now.
Mhm,
I read an article once about impulsive behavior in actually not just children, but in adults as well,
mhm.
specifically with ADHD.
Okay.
Um, and there was a need, my understanding of what they were saying was that there was a need for stimulation. And so the means to receive the stimulation was, through excitement. The quickest way, to in
Relieve themselves.
right. Essentially, it's just to get that little fix of,
Uh-huh.
of that stimulation that was needed. So for example, it talked about a person that will just like kind of poke at you, so let's say I'll use myself an example. So let's say
Uh-huh.
I'm the one that's in need of, that stimulation. I would go to my husband and just kind of like start messing with him, just to mess with him, just to get that arousal, and that arousal from him some kind of stimulates something within me, and it almost becomes like
A game.
yes, and no, essentially, and then it kind of like excites you, and so sometimes how you have children that will kind of poke and poke and poke, and then you just give them that reaction, and then they're almost excited about it. It's really odd and
Cause
interesting, but
sometimes she be smirking,
yeah,
like, yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah, I'm doing that.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel
it's,
good about. Yeah,
yeah,
because
kind of
okay, for example, this is a scenario, you guys, and I mean, like, you guys know me. I'm always transparent because what I say can actually help someone else. And
mhm,
so, we're
awesome.
in school. I officially have homeschooled her. She had not had the best walks of life in the public school system. So I have homeschooled her, and she has okay. She's done her work correctly. She's understanding reading. And then we take a break, we come back, and then she is on a high level. She is like, this is how you feel like the functions of behavior. She's escaping this. She does not want to do this.
Mhm, mhm,
That's what I thought.
mhm.
When she actually 20 minutes later went down back to normal, calmness, and Christina, you know how calm she is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, she says, I don't want to sit on the chair. I want to sit on the floor. She aced her midterm exam.
Mm, mhm,
All she needed was that burst of energy to tell me, I want to sit on the floor, not on the chair.
mhm.
And I'm like, ah.
I
But
know.
that's exactly I'm going into something, and then when the specialist said something about it might actually hurt her, so she just needed that that moment when she can just let go.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
It is not always enough for them to just stop. Sometimes you got to ride the wave. Um, there was, certain behaviors that, my daughters will display, and I understand that I have to ride the wave. It's
Hmm.
not enough for me to just say, okay, get over it, or, it's not that serious. You shouldn't be
Calm down. Like I always say,
calm
calm down, calm
down,
down.
calm down,
Okay.
you know, that's enough. Like honestly, there's certain times where that's appropriate, and
Hmm.
it might work. But in certain, patterns of behavior, you just got to ride the wave, and it is just what it is. and it might be one thing today and tomorrow might be something different. Sometimes we'll miss the clue that it's about to go down.
Okay, well, okay. So
Sometimes
you
that happens too.
pointed something really quick because she was not really want to sit down on a chair. She kept on doing this, and I kept on saying sit up. So
And I could have been
okay,
her that was
okay,
trying to
and
wiggle down.
wiggle down. I kept on saying
Yeah.
sit up, and so I guess that was irritating her because what she really was saying is I don't want to sit on the chair anymore. I want to sit on the floor, but she wasn't expressing it. Now she's high functioning, you guys, and she's talking. Um, but it cannot be the case for other individuals too. So that's something. But that has been like okay, hmm. And actually, her therapist said today. She said she yesterday she said to her, she said, I want to wiggle it off.
Mm.
I think she's been watching Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger is the best, you guys. For anything, bathroom, um, or Elmo. Elmo, she will not brush her teeth until she watches. If you go on YouTube, you guys, Elmo brush teeth. You
Mhm.
Google that. I mean, you do on YouTube, and there's a video of Elmo brushing the teeth with other people. That's the only time she brushes her teeth. I mean, that's her moment of when she can. Hey, she's 8, but hey, if it helps with everything and the behavior. So so let's go back. I know we went through.
There was one thing that I
Go
wanted to
ahead.
say before I actually forget.
Hmm.
A lot of times, we may think that we know what a behavior is, right?
Hmm.
And one thing that I've learned in my 15 years of working with certain students is that a lot of times we think that anxiety only shows itself as like nervousness. But anxiety can also show itself in being very short tempered, in the, what do you call it? Like aggressive, like comebacks and so forth. So, to give a visual or to give like an example, think about a time that you have been super nervous about something. Like for me, if I am, like for example, I had to preach, right? Like a couple weeks ago, I was super nervous, right? Because it was something that was out of my element and I never had really done in that capacity.
Hmm.
I was feeling super anxious about it. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to hear anybody talk. I was like short tempered. You know, if somebody was looking at me, they would have thought that I was upset or
Hmm.
mad or defiant. But really, it was
You in your zone.
I was anxious and I needed to keep the stimulation low so that I could try to cope, before I was going to perform,
Hmm.
and do my thing. So a lot of times, if you have like a
That's good.
student, or let's say a child that is, let's say, anxious about going into a store,
Hmm.
before knowing that they're going to the store, they might start, shouting at you or getting upset about you, getting upset, being defiant or not wanting to follow certain directions. That doesn't necessarily mean that the child is just flat out being defiant. It could mean that they're starting to become anxious. They're feeling very insecure. They don't know what to do and they don't know how to express it. So a lot of times, you can see that behavior. A student that may be anxious about, their ability to read, they might, it's easier to be aggressive and to be removed from the environment rather than saying I'm nervous because I don't know if I can understand or read this properly.
Hmm.
So we kind of have to look beyond the behavior at times, and not just always look at the surface,
I
but
said that
kind of
before, you
dig
guys.
a little bit deeper.
Yes.
It's more than just the old school, it's past all of that. We have to take a little bit time and just ask some more questions. A lot of kids nowadays, they are very expressive. My daughter will tell me things that I didn't know that she even knew about herself, but it only came out when I was able to humble myself and ask her a question.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so to move a little bit, okay, we were talking about what parents can do to support their child with set, and we only talked about one thing about, definitely getting all the information. Do you have anything else you would like to share?
Yes, one of the things that I would actually would like to say is that is very important as Black and Brown specifically. I would definitely say, and those with certain backgrounds, to be open to the information that you might be receiving once you do speak to a pediatrician, or let's say you have a teacher that might be expressing concerns. Unfortunately, we as a community of Black and Brown people are often labeled, and we don't always want to accept a diagnosis or a possibility of a diagnosis, because for us it's like, dang, another label. Now my child is really going to be, it's one thing that they're a Latino boy, or a Black girl, in a certain environment or whatever the case may be, but it's like, man, now it's ADHD on top of that. Now it's, an anxiety disorder, bipolar on top of that. And a lot of times, we don't always want to be open to that, that possibility. And I
Hmm.
believe that a lot of times it's because we just want to protect our kids. We want to protect our own. We don't want them to be judged. We don't want them to be treated differently. We don't want them to be, ostracized or to, feel any less than. That's just the bottom line. I think any parent, any race, any religion wants to make sure that their kids feel, secure and safe. But what I will challenge any parent that might be feeling these things is, on the other side of the diagnosis might be other resources that you may not have known about. On the other side of the diagnosis might be more treatments that you may not have been, able to receive because you don't have that diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, honestly, I would say, take those things to God, and pray about it. Talk to your circle, your community, and just say, hey, listen, I see this, but I feel like the school system is going to treat my Black boy, differently because, he's, I think they just want to say he's ADHD. I understand that there is an over and underrepresentation, on certain things based in and with certain races. But the bottom line is, as a parent, if there are things that you feel that are concern, just be open to what might be coming your way, and understand that you may not be happy with that diagnosis, but you know what? If you are willing to fight for your child, on the other side of that diagnosis will be,
The
access,
best thing.
the best that you, and listen, you milk and get everything that is available for your child.
Yes.
Everything. There are so many things that are available for our children that sometimes we limit just because we don't want to be labeled. And then what
Hmm.
happens? The child never gets the resources that they need. You pull them out of special ed because you just don't want them to be labeled, and then they don't get the resources that they need. They don't get the supports that they need. And, a lot of times they can become adults that will then be struggling, and then hopefully, we'll be able to navigate and get the supports that they need later on down the line. But, like I think about myself, I was diagnosed as an adult. What would have happened differently? Now, granted, I'm not, shameful of everything. And I think that considering everything that I've gone through, I've accomplished a lot. But, there were certain things that I wanted to do, that careers that I had wanted to embark on, that I didn't, just because, you know, I didn't think that I could, because
Mm-hmm.
I knew that there was a problem. I knew that I
Mm-hmm.
had ADHD. I knew that I needed extra supports, but what could have looked differently? We want to be able to give our children the absolute best. And sometimes it takes us humbling ourselves, um, educating ourselves, and just being open to, what may be coming our way. Just think the bottom line. Whatever you got to do, whatever you can to get the absolute best for your child. Do what you have to do for them and their future, not just your own, pride. Very, very big on that.
That's a very good advice. That's a very good advice. Okay, so we're wrapping up, you guys. Can you encourage the parents who are having having a child, or even not even a child who have a diagnosis, but just encourage it as an educator and as a mom?
So, as an educator and as a mom, I just want to first let you know that you are not alone. You are not in this by yourself. There are so many supports that are out there. I think alone, I think I'm a part of like five support groups. There are supports that are out there for you. Um, give
Oh,
yourself.
give your one with the on Facebook.
Yes, so I actually do have a group on Facebook. Thank you for mentioning that. I was about to
Yes.
fly right
And
past.
oh yeah, and afterwards, Christina, if you can put the information on there,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
tag it, whatever, on the
Absolutely.
comments below. Thank you.
So I started a support group called COVID-19 Homeschool Support. And it really was like when the schools had shut down, and so I started that, but it still has been continuing. And we have a nice network, and
Yes.
I would love to have more people to join. Obviously, again, we'll leave the link
Mm-hmm.
to join and invite other people. Everybody has shared different things that just helps to support our network of parents, and some that are educators that just want to just do the best for our children without losing our minds as well. um, but from parent to parent, honestly, I just want to say that there is no manual for this. I mean, if you are a believer, whatever, if the Bible, or if yours the Quran, whatever it is that your personal belief is, a lot of times, that's what we may turn to. But other than that, there really is no set manual of when your child does this, do this. And so you just really cut yourself some slack, laugh a little bit, and just enjoy the moments when you can, or when things are going great. And then when things are not going great, just remember the good times, and know that they're not going to last, all the time. They're really not. Laugh with your kids, don't be afraid to apologize to your child when I was getting super frustrated because I was working with Gabriella in a word problem, and we just were not vibing, and I was losing my patience, and I had to come back around and humble myself and say, I'm sorry, Gabriella, mommy was just having a hard time. And you know and I apologize. I probably, I need to work on my patience a little more. And she said, I understand, mommy. I understand it could be, difficult. Those moments right there, they speak volumes to your children, because it teaches them how they can also learn to accept accountability themselves. If you can't accept accountability, how can they?
Mm.
And so just understand that everything that you do, not all the things that you say, is really what teach your children. But we're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel. I'll tell you this: when a teacher comes to you and they share something or a concern, you're going to feel some kind of way. You will, and that's okay. That's when you go to your support group and say, listen, the teacher said that my daughter's not reading on grade level, and I'm feeling some kind of way. That's okay. Take those feelings to your support group, take it to prayer or whatever it is that you turn to, but act on it. Act on it and do everything that you have to do. It will be okay. I can promise you.
And I want to add, as an educator, I was an early childhood teacher for over 10 years. I have had those moments when I had to actually talk to the parents. And I had some parents who said, "Okay, what do you want? What do you need me to do as a parent? How can we help my child get to that level?"
Mhm.
And so those are the things. Okay, okay, I hear this. Okay, and I've actually had those conversations with as a parent. I don't like this, but now I know as an educator, I need to ask you as a parent now, what can I do? And so those are the things that you always have to like shift the conversation back to the teacher, and then you guys can collaborate together how to support your child.
Absolutely. You're a team. You have to approach
Yes.
it as a team. It is crucial because if one person doesn't see something, the other person, if you're both not on the same page, it can actually hinder the progress of your child.
Mhm.
If the data is showing that they need, special education, and everybody is saying, but you're the only one, that's putting a halt to it, and your halt could be just because you don't want your child to be labeled. You could literally be hindering a process that, can really blossom into something that can really be beneficial to your child, which can also, affect them and help them, your family life to be better,
Mhm.
so you got to kind of step out of it and see the bigger picture. And I know that that's hard sometimes. I get it. Trust me.
I get it too. I get it too.
I
Okay, well, thank you, Christina, so much for your time.
thank
You guys, great information. Great information. Replay it, share it.
you.
I'm not big on numbers, but this is all for support. You can copy the link and text message to people, and they can watch it. You guys, this has been a blessing. Okay, until next time, you guys. Um, what I've learned is that we need to invite what we hear
Mhm,
and educate ourselves,
mhm.
educate ourselves. And then when we have educated ourselves, then we can find a lot of more resources and it will be beneficial to our children. That's what I
Absolutely.
heard. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Until
Absolutely.
next time, you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.